Hi Liam, Book of Films here. So, based off the success of last year's video where I predicted who was going to die in the Suicide Squad, by the way, you can stop telling me who actually died because I've seen the movie, like you, and I made the predictions a year ago, so you don't have to tell me I was wrong. Now, moving on, since people seem to like that video, I watched the film recently and I've kind of let it stew for the last week, and I've been thinking what would make a good threequel, a good sequel to the Suicide Squad, whether that is another soft reboot by another director, another James Gunn movie, or something in between. I'd really like to see what they can do with it. So I've put some ideas together in my head, and this is just going to be kind of a loose ramble video. I'll try and keep it short, and I'll just go over who I think could be in it, what I think the plot could be, the villains, the setting, etc, etc. So for the Suicide Squad 3, which is what I'm going to call it, I'm sure somebody can come up with a much smarter and more interesting name. I did think about going down James Gunn's route of potentially, he originally wanted Henry Cavill as Superman, as potentially the villain in the movie, but there's a game coming out called Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, I believe. It's been a while since I saw that trailer. And in the game, they're going to be hunting Superman and, by extension, the Justice League, because they're presumably possessed by Brainiac, if the trailer's anything to go off. So let's not go for that. And the idea instantly that I had was that the Suicide Squad should face off against the League of Assassins and their leader, Al-Ghul, or Al-Ghul, as some people call him. And I think it's the perfect villain. Because one, we get to go to like Arabia, the Middle East, which is a good new location. The first film was in a kind of dingy American city. The second one was in a fictional South American island. And now we're going to Asia. And I think it's a good sandy kind of Arabian Nights themed location that I think would be really, really good for this movie. And another reason I think they would be really good is because Talia al Ghul would make a great member of the squad, fighting against her own father. And there's quite a few characters who have ties with the League of Assassins, like Lady Shiva or Bronze Tiger being a famous member of the Suicide Squad, and probably at this point the most famous character that they haven't used yet. So I think that I would love to see those characters against the squad and maybe join them later, or vice versa. Now, as for the squad themselves, obviously, spoilers for the Suicide Squad, the survivors are Bloodsport, Ratcatcher 2, King Shark, and Harley Quinn, who is the only character to survive both movies. And from the original Suicide Squad, the characters that didn't show up are Deadshot, Katana, and Killer Croc. Now, obviously, Boomerang was in both, but he's dead, and Rick Flag was in both, but he's also dead. So I think combining the surviving cast of both movies together would be amazing. I'd love to see how Bloodsport and Deadshot would fare off against each other, and having Will Smith in the movie would be great. I don't think, from what I heard, he was against the movie. Being in the movie, I believe it was scheduling conflicts, which is why Bloodsport was originally supposed to be a recast version of Deadshot, if rumours are to be believed. But I think having both of those together would be absolutely amazing, and having both those squads together would up the tension quite a bit, just because we would be able to see two surviving squads go in, and probably not all of them are going to get out. Now, there's some easy candidates for who wouldn't make it out of that film, given that Katana and Killer Croc aren't particularly popular characters and they both survived the first movie. I would see them being pretty big deaths, but I think we could definitely see one of the people from the second movie, from the Suicide Squad, go out, especially if we've got Deadshot and Bloodsport. I could see one of those two potentially not making it out of the film. Now, also, I'd love to see Deathstroke. Now, Joe, I'm going to mess up the name as I always do, but Joe Mangaletto, I don't know, played Deathstroke in the Snyder Cut and in the Joss Whedon cut for a very brief period of time, and he was supposed to be the villain in the Batman movie, and it never happened. Now, I think that's a massive waste. His costume is fantastic, and given that the character has fought against and for the squad in the past, I think that would be an absolutely fantastic use of the character. Now, moving on, any other people I'd like to see in the film? Will we get Weasel back after he technically survived the end of the last one? I don't think it really matters. There's a couple of other characters I think would be great members of the team, like the Clock King or Electrocutioner. James Gunn showcased that he can turn those really, really weird characters into really likable ones, but I think my number one pick would be Poison Ivy. Now, Killer Frost is a much more popular character in the squad's kind of lineage and history, but given that the relationship between Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn have, I think that would be a fantastic note to end her story on if Harley has moved away from the Joker in both the Birds of Prey movies and the Suicide Squad movies and has found a kind of non-toxic relationship in Poison Ivy. I think that would be an absolutely fantastic arc for the character and would kind of tie that perfectly off. Now, for why Ra's al Ghul would make the best villain for this comes down to the fact that the Suicide Squad, fundamentally is about death and is about characters dying, and that's the whole kind of gimmick of the film, is that characters die. Well, what's the gimmick with Ra's al Ghul is that he can't die. And with access to the Lazarus Pit and the League of Assassins, those people have lived for hundreds of years. The first Suicide Squad movie has already touched the supernatural and the magical elements of the universe, so it's not out of place whatsoever. And I think to build on Starro as a threat from the last movie, to include Ra's al Ghul would be an absolutely amazing thing. And I think to even build upon what we had last time, I think it would be an amazing twist to halfway through the movie resurrect some of the previously dead squad members from the first two movies. I think the first squad from the Suicide Squad would make a great candidate for that, because by nature of them all dying, they're all expendable, but because we didn't get to spend too much time with them, being able to see them resurrected and fight against the squad that's sent to take Ra's al Ghul down, I think that would be an absolutely amazing twist. And I think thematically, Ra's makes a great villain for the team because of this fact. I'd love to see Rick Flag back, potentially get some revenge on Peacemaker. We don't know whether Peacemaker is going to spin off into his own direction, whether he survives his own miniseries, or whether he comes back into the film at all. I would be surprised if he doesn't, but seeing the squad head into kind of unknown territory and have Peacemaker head in there on a mission for the same thing from different employers, I think would be a really, really cool plot twist. And I think seeing him and Bloodsport fight again would be great. I think seeing Rick Flag resurrected, at least temporarily, fighting off against Peacemaker would also be a really great way to tie off the trilogy. And I just think it works. I think it's a great setting, a great group to fight against, and a great twist on who a villain for the Suicide Squad could be. Now, I have a million ideas, and maybe one day I'll pitch an entire film for it together, but right now that's what I'm going to leave it as. My last point is that I'd love to see Amanda Waller out in the field. For whatever reason, perhaps she's after some of the Lazarus and needs to be there in person, or something is going on that she needs to be in the field. Now, they technically did this for a little bit in the first movie, but I think having her actually in the adventure and being escorted will really, really push the tension of the film up, especially if she's threatening to blow people up left, right and centre. I think her character really improved in the second film, and I'd love to see how far she'll go and how morally grey she can be, especially in relation to something like the Lazarus Pit that can resurrect people from the dead. I'd love to see what a corrupt government agent could do with that. So I'm going to leave some of my thoughts like that, and let me know if you agree with any of them, if you liked the previous two movies, if you think acknowledging the Ayer movie, the David Ayer movie at all, is a good or bad thing, and which characters in this future installment you would like to see appear, and which ones you think would live and which ones you think would die. Because obviously, as we go forward, having two squads together, you've got two sets of characters that people really like and really connect with, two sets of characters that have already survived once, so the tension just goes up and up and up. You can see how upset people were that Captain Boomerang died in the second one, and seeing those are characters that people are attached to die is always a big thing. So the more movies go past, the more tension with the squad, because the more chances of those familiar characters not making it to the end. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do we think resurrection would ruin things, or do you think it's a great antithesis to the powers of the squad? Let me know down below.
This is Katana. She's got my back. She can cut all you in half with one sword stroke, just like mowing the lawn. I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the